Bring our council meeting to order, please. Apologize, we're in closed session, so we're running a little late, a few minutes. We'll open the regular council meeting at 7:03. The roll call, please.
Councilors Payne? Here. Claire?
Here.
Haynes?
Here.
Meredith?
Here.
Shelton?
Here.
Could all rise for a silent prayer and then remain standing for the flag salute. Girl Scout Troop 322. Have the flag salute now, please. Thank you.
Color guard attention. Color guard advance. Color guard post the colors. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Color guard dismissed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we have the video statement, we were in closed session on some items. I asked for a comment from our attorney, please. Mr. Rudolph.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Council is in closed session this evening on real property negotiations, and there was no reportable action. And there's listed conference with labor negotiator, which is going to be held after the regular meeting.
Thank you. We'll have the video statement, please.
This meeting of the Galt City Council is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel, on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Tonight's meeting can be seen on Channel 14 and will also be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv this Friday and Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Tonight's meeting can also be seen live via video streaming on the city's website at www.ci.galt.ca.us. A VHS copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address council should fill out a speaker identification form and give it to the clerk. Please speak into the microphone when addressing council and state your name for the record.
Okay, next item is agenda approval, additions, and are any deletions? Do we have any? None? I have one that I would like to add under presentations. She's not going to make it?
No, she's here. We don't need to add.
Okay.
We'll just follow.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I misunderstood. Okay. If there were no changes, public comment, please.
Okay, under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the audience may address the council on any item of interest to the public or on any agenda items before or during consideration of the item. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the city clerk prior to addressing the council. We request that you state whether you live within the Galt city limits or the county area. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker. And all the speaker sheets I have are for the utility rate increase, so unless anyone has anything else to...
Okay. Information consent agenda. Ask the clerk to read those, please.
Okay, number 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 3rd, 2009. Number 2, approval of the City of Galt warrants. Number 3, proposed amendments to the Galt zoning, the Galt Municipal Code, Section 18, Table 18.20-2, addressing setbacks and maximum heights for detached accessory buildings, structures, and equipment, 120 square feet or less in cumulative area of the residential zoning districts. And number 4, Ordinance 2009-3, amending Table 18.20 related to allowed setbacks and maximum height requirements for residential accessory buildings, structures, and equipment.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move the consent calendar. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? None? Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Approved. Next item is we have a presentation from Margaret Roberts, President, City Clerks Association of California. Could you come forward to the podium, please? Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Margaret Roberts. I'm the City Clerk for the City of Menlo Park and the President of the City Clerks Association of California. And it is my honor and privilege tonight to come and present your City Clerk, Liz Aguirre, with a most prestigious award. Reaching the Master Municipal Clerk certification awarded by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks requires dedication and persistence. Approximately 5% of city clerks will ever reach this goal. The MMC is a very prestigious designation, and Liz has joined the elite group by obtaining this certification. Liz is the Secretary to the City Attorney for the City of Lodi in 1984, Deputy City Clerk for the City of Galt from 87 to 89, then moved to the City Manager's Office as Executive Assistant to the City Manager from 89 to 96, and in 96 was elected as your City Clerk. Liz has many accomplishments since being with the City of Galt, including implementing a digital records management program, a community-wide Shred It Day, where Shred It trucks are brought in and citizens can bring up to 3 boxes to shred, free of charge. She's coordinated a citywide cleanup day where dumpsters are brought in for everything from trash to appliances and tires. In 1 week, coordinated a citywide event to honor your gold medal winner where thousands of people turned out, and has taken your city council from a paperless agenda to your laptops. Liz attended Cottage College, a private Christian women's college in Nevada, Missouri. She's participated in the Northern California City Clerks Association Board for many years. She's been the program director for 3 years, coordinated the conference for the 2000 annual conference, which was in Sacramento, coordinated the store and annual conference in Bakersfield, as well as the upcoming conference in Rohnert Park. She's chaired the Vault, which contains numerous informational items that clerks brought to share with other clerks, and she's chaired the nominating committee in 2008. She is also a member or sits on the board of directors for the Lodi Memorial Hospital, the executive board member for the McFarland Ranch Restoration Project, vice president of the Galt Kiwanis Club, Galt High School Key Club advisor, member of the Galt Area Historical Society, Galt Friends of the Library, Galt Chamber of Commerce, Lodi chapter of the PEO, National Association, National Notary Association, and of course CCAC and IIMC. As you can see, she participates in many community activities in your community. And she is also a lung cancer survivor and is often asked to speak to people with lung cancer. Liz, on behalf of the City Clerks Association of California and all California city clerks, it is my privilege to present you, my friend, with this certificate of exceptional professional achievement in recognition of earning the highest professional achievements of city clerks worldwide, the Master Municipal Clerk certification. And if I could just read this real quick. In appreciation and recognition of Elizabeth A. Aguirre for her personal sacrifice and dedication required to attain professional excellence exhibited by achieving Master Municipal Clerk certification. The Master Municipal Clerk certification is a lofty goal demonstrating the highest level of professional competency in public administration. Reaching this prestigious certification increases your ability to serve your community and the municipal clerk profession as a Master Municipal Clerk. You're a role model and a professional municipal clerk worldwide. Therefore, the City Clerks Association of California, with great pleasure, does hereby commend and recognize you for this accomplishment.
Al Baldwin, I feel like the pressure's really on right now.
Man, Al's not here.
He's gone.
Where's the cell phone when you need one?
I got it. Thank you.
Let me just say this is very special coming from Margaret because she is a very good friend. And we've been through a lot together. Thank you. Thank you for coming all this way. You're welcome. She's not from the valley anymore. So no. Thank you very much. Yes, I think I said it. I'm not very good right now.
Well, if Liz isn't going to say anything, I'm going to say something for her. You know, all those wonderful accomplishments that were mentioned are just a drop in the bucket. She is the heart, to some extent, of what goes on between the council, the staff, and the community. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate her. And she tries to keep me out of trouble, which is a big job.
Thank you.
You do keep us on the straight and narrow.
I try. Thank you very much.
Okay. Next item is scheduled matters. Revised utility services rates. Staff report. Greg?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The next item before you is the annual adjustment of utility service rates. The recommendation is that the council conduct a public hearing, tabulate any written protest. In the absence of a majority protest, you approve the revised rate schedules for water, wastewater, Tier 2 storm drain services, as well as solid waste services to become effective March 1st, 2009. The last recommendation is that you approve recombining Funds 07, which is the Wastewater Operations and Maintenance Fund, and Fund 15, the Wastewater Upgrade Fund. Got a PowerPoint presentation that will walk you through what we've done in the most recent rate study. I trimmed it down to about half of what I started with. It will take some time. There's a lot of information here. I want to get through as quickly as we can so we can get public input, and hopefully we'll answer most of your questions for you. What's my extra stuff, Liz? There it goes, okay. What we're going to talk tonight about is the methodology that we use for adjusting the rates, a little overview of the rate study that we undertook a little over a year ago, talk about the proposed rate adjustments, and these are going to be divided into two different groups. One is those which will come out of the rate study once we implement the water meters, and the second is what we're proposing from March 1st going forward through the rest of this year. And I'm going to talk about questions and answers. Just to clarify, the utilities we're talking about are solid waste, storm drainage, water, and wastewater. We historically have adjusted rates by one of two different means. The first is a annual inflationary adjustment. This is typically done for the storm drainage. This can be done using a CPI type index. We also sometimes undertake specific rate studies. We did this last year for water and wastewater. We also sometimes will negotiate a contract rate. This was done for our solid waste. The annual inflationary update is, again, typically based on some type of consumer price index. It is a general cost accounting for general items of overall cost change. It's very cheap and easy to establish. There's indexes we can look up online, but it is less specific and so therefore less accurate. For the city of Galt, we began using the CPI in 2004 for our annual rate increases. We use the West Urban Regional Area CPI. This is the western region of the United States. It takes into account the cost of doing business being more on the West Coast typically than the East Coast. And for the period November 2007 to October 2008, the CPI was 4.1%. The other method we typically use is a specific rate study. In September 2007, the council awarded a contract to HDR Engineering to do a specific rate study for the wastewater fund and the water fund, as well as the water implementation plan. This was to be based upon actual estimates of revenue and expenses for both operation and maintenance and capital costs. Much more costly to do this, however, it's much more accurate, and we could allow any capital improvement projects we want to, up to what we want the ratepayers to pay for in terms of CIP projects. I'm going to gloss over some of what they did in the rate study. I'll explain that. This is going to come back to the council sometime in the fall, just prior to the actual implementation of the new rates relative to the water meters. But basically, they start out with their revenue requirement. How much money do we need to make in order to provide the level of service? They then talk about a cost of service to make certain that we look at all the different classes for residential, business community, industry, institutional, to see how we should be serving each class and whether they should all be paying the same or different rates. Once we have that information, we then move into a rate design, where we then look at how the rates for each of these different classes of customer should be put together. The key assumptions we did in the rate study: we used a 10-year period from 2007-8 to 16-17. We had a good year of data behind us, and we wanted to project it out. The staff now has this tool that we can then look at each year to make a better assessment of what's going to use going forward. We can adjust it for CIPs, and it spits a labor cost. There are a lot of assumptions about growth and other things that we can go back in and model, and always have basically a 10-year running projection of what our utility rates are going to be. Again, the study was done with the implementation of phase 1 of the water meters. One of the primary codicils was that each utility stand on its own. Water fund pays for the water services. The wastewater fund should pay for the wastewater services. We looked at a number of planning considerations, fiscal maintainability. We wanted to maintain minimum debt service ratios. We wanted minimum reserve levels. We wanted to try to stabilize the revenue and also the rates. They didn't bounce up and down. We also wanted to ensure that we had adequate financing of our CFE projects from the rates. Those were also coupled with those that we would have funded by developers. Other considerations were that we wanted to move toward volume-based water and wastewater rates. This was what's mandated by the state. We wanted to establish a baseline water usage volume. We wanted to look at a tiered or a block usage to promote conservation. This is similar to what SMUD and PG&E do with your power bills with different tiers. I want to talk about the possible cost of service, where you would end up charging different customers different amounts. A lot of cities will discount power, or utilities will discount power to businesses versus homes because they want the businesses. Something else that we took into consideration. We want to increase the base rate to stabilize the revenue. Right now we pay like $1.84 per meter is the base rate for a water meter. That's more than likely will be going up. There will be an offsetting decrease though in the water volume rates. So the net water bill will be the same. That will allow us to stabilize the rates as we get into the water meter portion. And the first 2 or 3 years we want to be able to stabilize those, so then we can then make small adjustments. And then last time we wanted to look at winter averaging for wastewater rates. We looked at a number of options. The first water option was to maintain the current metered rate structure. That's a very low base rate and a relatively high usage rate. And everybody going in with a new meter would just be put on the same rate. The second option that was looked at would be to develop a new metered rate. I think we settled on about $10 as a base rate charge. So you would pay $10 a month whether you used any water or not. Also want to clarify, when I talk about rates, I find it much easier to talk in months. I know we get a bi-monthly bill, but any numbers I present tonight should be on a monthly basis, unless indicated otherwise. Again, with the higher base rate, though, we are talking about an offsetting decrease in the base usage rate. So rather than paying $1.08 per 100 cubic feet, that will drop down to some 65 or 70 cents. The end result, the bill should be the same, pretty much the same as what you're getting now. Option 3 is a metered rate. We would increase the base rate over time. We would still have the same offsetting reduction in usage cost, but for residences there would be a 2-tiered rate structure. We'd set a base rate. As long as you didn't exceed that, you'd pay one rate. If you went beyond that because you took long showers, had a big lawn, like to wash your cars at home, you eventually would pay a little bit higher rate. This is to encourage conservation. The study recommendation is that we go to option 3 for residential customers, to smooth the transition to a full metered rate. It's a little fairer between those that would have a meter and those that wouldn't have a meter, and it's a stronger signal toward conservation. We would stay with option 2 for all other customers because it's difficult to get those that are on a master meter, such as a mobile home park or apartment building or condos, to economize and conserve, because one person might and the neighbor might not. The conclusions of the water study were that we will be deficient as a result of increasing operating costs and our capital costs, so costs are going up. By the year 2013, 2014, we expect the deficit to grow by a total of $2.06 per month. There are additional impacts relative to the water meter implementation plan. The $2 is just the annual increase of cost of doing business without the meters over the next few years. Based upon the current study, we're looking at a rate transition plan over the next 5 years of between 9, 8, 8, 2, and 2%. The higher numbers in the initial years are a result of CIP projects such as the arsenic project. Staff, however, as we'll talk about later, is recommending right now we stay with the 4.1 CPI for the current time. The higher numbers are based upon the overall study with the water meters. We did something very similar for wastewater. We looked at maintaining the sewer option, which is basically staying flat rate for all residential customers and a metered rate for commercial, industrial, and institutionals. The metered rate is varied. It can be we have a couple of customers that actually we meter their sewage flow and they pay so much per gallon of sewage. Most of them, though, are metered based upon the volume of water that they used. The second rate option was a metered rate for all with an increased fixed charge to a transition to volume. So in this case, the residential customers would also be charged based upon their water usage. Option 3 was pretty much the same as option 2, except we would cap the wastewater rate at what we call winter water averaging. That means we'd figure out how much water you were using in the winter when you weren't irrigating, and that would be the cap for your sewer. So during the summer when you were irrigating more, your sewer bill wouldn't go up because you were watering the plants. It's a very common tool that agencies use rather than having to put a meter on everybody's sewer line, which is very difficult, if not impossible to do. It's a way we can adjust the sewer bill during the summer months so they're not paying for what goes on their lawn. The recommendations are that for the time being we stay with option 1 for all customers. We realize there's going to be a somewhat troublesome break-in period. As we all get onto meters, there's going to be a lot of people having some higher water bills, some with less water bills, a lot of fluctuations. So we thought the least we can do is right up the first year or two, leave all the wastewater rates stable, leave everybody on a flat rate. Once we get some significant data under our belts, so then we can look at transitions into other items such as charging a residential customer or saving them money based upon the actual water usage that they have. We'll go into a transition into winter averaging. Right now we have very little, if any, information about what the water bills would be different. We have 400 and some water meters right now for residential customers. In another year we'll have another 3,600. That means in another year we'll have over 4,000 data sets that we can look at and see on average what are people using over the course of a year for wastewater. The conclusions and recommendations, like the water fund, the sewer fund, is going to be deficient relative to operating and capital needs. Again, those same costs are going up. We expect those rates to be deficient by $4.11 by 2013-14, the same time period. That looks at a rate increase of about 14% over the next year, and that's projected a one-year big increase relative to 2 items. One is the SSMP, which is the Sanitary Sewer Management Program. That's what we talked about with the CIP. This is all kinds of new state regulations about how we manage our sewer system. It means we have to spend more money on line replacement, on developing a fats, oils, and grease program, on videotaping every line. We're in the process right now of trying to develop, and we'll bring that back to the council probably in May, what that final program is going to look like. The other one is the issue of the biosolids. We need to haul off the biosolids until we get the new improvements in place. That 14% increase is if we had full implementation of those 2 items, which we don't anticipate that we will within this next 6 months to a year. So again, staff is recommending that we only propose a 4.1% CPI increase for the remainder of this year. The other thing that we're asking council to consider is to recombine the 15 fund and the 7 fund. Most cities, the upgrade of the sewer plant is basically another item, another capital project to be funded out of the wastewater fund. They were originally all in one pot. We split them apart in the attempt to try to show citizens how we could, track their money, make sure we spent that money on the upgrade. A portion of that $25 that they're currently paying, the long-term intent was for maintenance. We've already installed some of the improvements, and we're actually now having to maintain them. The cost to maintain those, the equipment, the supplies, the materials, and the labor, that was coming out of the 7 fund. That's part of the reason why we need a large increase in the wastewater fund. Yet the money is sitting in the 15 fund, and because they're separate funds, we can't cross charges over. So we're asking the council allow us to use the 15 fund. Our option would be we could lower the wastewater upgrade fund a few cents and raise the wastewater fund. It seemed to be easier to just combine the 2 funds back together than have the rates bounce up and down. Probably the best news I'm going to deliver tonight is, again, relative to the upgrade fund. We believe the current fee of $25 per month is still sufficient to fund the capital cost, the financing debt service, and the ongoing maintenance of the treatment plant. The money that we've banked to date that we've not spent on the design and some of the upgrades is still there for us to use. We're still in line for the state revolving fund loan. We still anticipate getting that loan, which will further reduce some of the costs. I think we're talking about having the council combine those 2 funds together, the wastewater fund and the upgrade fund, to allow us to use that full pool of money to develop the treatment plant. Again, we're very optimistic that money will be adequate. However, we won't know until we actually build the whole plant. Again, all of the rates that we've just talked about, these are all things that I'm going to be bringing back to the council sometime in the fall, because they're going to basically take effect when we start the new water meters, which will be January 1st of 2010. What we'll talk about from this point forward is those that we're asking council to consider for the period of March 1st through December 31st. The reason for showing you everything up till now was to give you a sense of what we've been doing over the last year and how involved the rate study was, to gather any feedback, and to kind of further the discussion, if council so feels, relative to the second phase of the water meter implementation. In this case, we're going to start off with solid waste. I'm going to pass it over to Jason.
Thanks, Greg. Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm going to present the section on solid waste. It's my responsibility to oversee the contract with California Waste Recovery, and that's why I'm going to be presenting this tonight. Council and the community is aware the city contracts with Cal Waste to provide solid waste services to the community, both recycling as well as solid waste pickup. Approximately 7,200 accounts in the city. The current contract runs from 2007 through 2014, includes a number of different services, including, again, garbage collection, recycling collection, yard waste. There are 2 annual bulky waste pickups available to anybody in the community. There are also household hazardous waste pickups out at the Galt market grounds. In addition, customers have the ability to increase the size of their recycling and yard waste containers, add additional containers to reduce the cost of their services. So residents concerned about the rising cost of utility services, that's an option. You can simply increase the recycling that you do, downsize the size that of the carts that you have on the solid waste side, and you can reduce some costs there. Okay. Throughout the term of the contract with Cal Waste, there is a set provision in how the solid waste rates are adjusted. It's divided into 2 different sections. One is what we call the refuse rate index. It's a combination of different cost of living adjustments, CPI type adjustments that reflect increase in costs associated with labor, fuel, maintenance, and other types of items that Cal Waste has to deal with. The other component is the disposal component. As the cost in taking the stuff to the landfill increases, the rates increase as well. For the first component, the refuse rate index, which is the largest component of it, it is going up approximately 6%, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise to anybody knowing how fast the price of fuel went up in 2008, and it's reflective of the increase of the last year. So this next year, assuming gas prices don't go up again, we may not be looking at this type of increase, but that's largely driving the large RRI increase that we're proposing, or that's being recommended here tonight. On the disposal side, there's actually a significant increase out at Kiefer Landfill. The county owns Kiefer Landfill. There was a large increase back in the summer. We were concerned about that. We talked with Cal Waste and asked them to go and take a look at other landfills as far as what the options and the rates were, and they went down to North County Landfill down in Stockton. The rate was about the same, but it was a closer drive. It was faster for them, so the residents picked up some savings in reduced transportation costs. So you see a very minimal disposal cost increase of 1.8%. Factored together, the total increase for residents is about 5.52% per month, which equates to $1.20 a month. And then that's on the residential side, and then the commercial rates are also adjusted on that same proportion. I think that's it. This just shows, I think Greg is going to go through in a second here, we've got comparisons on how the rates have increased over time for all the various utility funds. We went back to 2002 on the solid waste side. You can see where we went to, starting at 2002, 3%, 1%, 4%. We went a couple of years without an adjustment. And we were in contract negotiations. That was a period of time where we were going through, and the Cal Waste was considering doing a transfer station and other things. And in 2007, we finally negotiated a new contract, and we saw the big hit at 13%. And then since the new contract, we've had a 5 and a 5.52 reflective of the new contract that's in place, and that will be adjusted again according to the same parameters on a year-to-year basis using those indices which I previously mentioned.
I came credit for the colors. My staff got to pick the colors. Moving on from solid waste to storm drainage. The entire city is divided up into two different tiers. Back in 2003, when we separated the storm drain and the sewer fees, we created all the properties in place at that time became Tier 1. All new construction after March of 2003 became Tier 2. Tier 1 is not the true cost. We set the fee back in 2003. It has not changed since then. And according to Prop 218, we cannot change that unless we get a majority of the ratepayers approve that. Tier 2 can be adjusted with the CPI type index without further approval. This is a map that shows the areas. The areas in green are the Tier 2. These are the areas that can be adjusted. So you can see the significant portion of the remaining city is Tier 1, and those have not adjusted. When those areas were developed, the developers agreed that from that point forward they accepted the rates at that point, that year, and then they also agreed to a CPI index annually if council approved that for all subsequent years. This show, again, going back to the year 2003, that's when we first started the storm drain fee. We separated it from the drainage out of the sewer fee. There is no CPI or no increases for a couple of years. And then with the Tier 1, it was $2.43 all the way down. It's still consistent. And the Tier 2 fee has changed from $5.41 to $6.50 over the last 6 years. It doesn't go up a whole lot. We're proposing a 26-cent increase for this year. Those are for typical single-family homes. This is for multifamily commercial. These are all the same 4.1% adjustments just based upon different units, whether it's square footage or based on acre size. Moving into the water rates, the preliminary rate study by HDR indicated a 9% increase was due for the next year. That included the water meters. That was anticipation that we'd have full implementation of both phases of water meters in the next 2 years. Council decided to give us direction to do just the first phase, which is about half. and then has not given us direction on the second phase, which has left it kind of hanging out indefinitely. Also, as I mentioned, we've got the large arsenic project and the meter, as well as the metering, and so staff is recommending that we cut off the increase at this time at the same 4.1% for CPI to keep up with the rest of the costs. We've traced water rates back to 2001 when we did a rate study. We had no change for a year, and you can see the CPI indexes have been somewhere between 2.8 and 4.7. In 2008, they took a large jump, again, because of the arsenic project. We knew that was coming, and we're looking at a 4.1% again this year. That equates to a 91-cent per month increase for the average household. For those people that are currently on a water meter, again, they pay a current flat rate. For a typical home has a 1-inch meter, so they pay us $2.31 if they use no water, and they pay 94 cents for 100 cubic feet of water. Those would go up all by the same 4.1%. So it would go up to $2.40 plus 98 cents per 100 cubic feet, and this works out to the same, based on the theoretical amount of water that a household would use, it works out to the same as the flat rate. We always get questions at the public meetings of where does all our money go? So we put in a couple of slides that tries to show in the water fund, this is the 05 fund for the current year, where is all the money going? The total budget is $4.1 million. You can see the bigger orange section, over half of the pie is for capital improvements. That's mostly the arsenic project. There's also some well rehabs, some filter rehabs, some other projects. No capital equipment in this current year's budget. We have administration cost and then the operations and maintenance cost. So the majority of the project is made up by actual capital improvement projects. Going into the next year, that kind of flip-flops. We have lesser capital improvements, and we have about the same maintenance and operations. The pie looks a little different. The maintenance and operation standpoint is about the same. It's just the overall expenditures in the budget has dropped in the next year. That gives you some idea of where the water's money is spent. Moving into wastewater, again, the study indicated that we needed a 14% increase for the biosolids off-hauling and the sanitary sewer management plan for full implementation. Those are, we believe, hopefully we'll bring them in at a little bit of a scaled down version on the SSMP. We went ahead and budgeted as if we were going to have to do the full version that we thought the state might require us to do. I don't think that's going to be the case. We'll bring that back to the council in May. Again, we're talking about dropping back from a 14% to a 4.1% CPI. The biggest difference here is taken up in two places. One is the deferment of some of the capital improvement costs relative to the off-hauling and the sanitary sewer management program. But also, if we are in a little bit of a deficit, we would like to be able to use some of the Fund 15 to offset the maintenance cost of the improvements. This shows the current upgrade fund. It's currently at the $25 per residential unit and a commensurate for commercial or institutional use. We don't propose any change in that fund, again, for this year. There's no change last year either. What we've done now, because we're proposing to combine those two funds, we've shown them together in one slide. We've taken the sewer monthly rate, which is the second column, and the monthly upgrade fee, and we're now showing a total monthly rate for the two combined. So it shows in 2006 when we implemented the $10 a month charge, and then it went to $25, and it hasn't changed since then. And we're also proposing no change again for this year. So the average sewer bill would go from, for those two combined, $50.81 to $51.87, $1.06 per month increase. Again, that was just for a typical single-family residence. All the other uses, commercial, industrial, multifamily, institutional, would go up by the same percentages. This chart is always fun to look at each year as these different cities go through their upgrades. We try to get a sense of how we're faring relative to other cities that have done upgrades. When we first started this, we were one of the first ones that got caught in the permit cycle and had to upgrade. And you can see how Galt compares with our upgrade cost at 25 million, our population, and what our projected rate is at 5187 for the next year versus what's happening in some of the other cities. They used to be below us in the chart, now they're way above us. Hillsburg was one of them. They used to be very inexpensive, and now they're doing their plant. This goes to show the value of population, because the more people you have, you can divide the cost through, the less it is per household. But you can also see what our rate increase is over the last year versus what everybody else is. They're beginning to catch up with us. Just like with water, we've put together a slide to show where all of our wastewater funds are spent. Now, this is just the 7 fund. This is not the combination of the 15. If I add that to it, then the whole pie becomes orange, because there's $25 million worth of upgrades. So we couldn't do that. Again, of a $5.8 million budget for the next year, 3.4 is still capital improvements. That basically includes the replacement of the Live Oak lift station, the Live Oak force main, other sewer rehab projects, or lift station upgrades, a little bit of capital equipment for the next year, some administration costs, and about $1.9 million in actual operations and maintenance direct charges. The same thing for the 9-10 year. Again, it's also a little flip-flop. We have less capital improvements for that year. We've taken care of the Live Oak lift station. We basically pulled some money that we would normally spend over 2 years. We pulled it all into the first year and to replace the Live Oak lift station and the force main. And so you have a little smaller overall budget of 3.7. You can see where it's going into the green part, operations and maintenance, capital improvements, administration, and a little bit of capital equipment. This is where we bring all the totals. The current monthly total that typical residents pay is either $97.73 if you're a Tier 1, or $101.54 if you're a Tier 2 customer. If we bring in, this is what the proposed increases are. It's 4.1% for water, wastewater, Tier 2 storm drainage, or 5.41 for solid waste. I think that's 5.2. Here's what the difference is. You can see what it is for each of the individual utilities. Totals about $3.17 or $3.43 per month. But again, these are for a typical residential household. And it shows you what your proposed new maximum bill would be. Again, this is per month. This again shows the history. We're back to 2002 when we were back at $46 per month, and it shows we've a little more than doubled since 2002. 2003, we started with the tiers in the storm drain system, created a new fee, went from $54 to $100 over that last 6-year period. And the significant portion of that is the upgrade, which started in 2006. In terms of the overall utility bill, over half of the bill is going to wastewater. That includes the O&M portion and the upgrade portion. About a quarter of it is solid waste. Well, almost a quarter is water, and a little tiny, only 2% goes for storm drain. In terms of how we compare to everybody else, the lower we are on this chart, the better. We keep going lower and lower each year. Elk Grove was at the top at $130.84, and we've not cherry-picked cities. We've just picked some cities and said this is what they are. We've called the cities and said for a typical home, we tried to do as close to a head-to-head comparison as we could to give some idea. Our proposed total bill is up $3.17 at $100.90 per month. That's just below the 10-city average of $106.67. So we're here. This ranges from a low of $81.56 for West Sacramento to a high of $130. West Sacramento's is so low because they got a free ride to hook up to regional. We'll never get that. If they'd paid the full rate, you'd add another $20 to that real easy. Obviously, the closer you are to regional, the cheaper your sewer might be. Like, it just gives you some idea of where the grass might be greener, or might not be. We did quite a bit of public outreach for this program, given the length of time with the water meter program. We did have an information meeting back in October where we talked about the water meter program as well as the rate study. We sent notices for this meeting out in December. We also sent separate notices in all the utility bills. We sent notices to both the property owners and the tenants. So we wanted to get everybody's, we've had complaints before about tenants weren't being told about the things, and they're paying the bill. We sent notices to everybody. We brought the water meter plan to the council back in December. We put notice on the city webpage, and we had a second public information meeting this last January, which probably was the best turnout we've had. It all comes down to the public hearing tonight, after which we'll ask the council to set the final rates. The rates that we've been discussing, this 4.1% increase, are the maximums that can be set by the council tonight without reestablishing the noticing period. The council cannot do more, but you could do less if you so choose. The current budget does have a 3% built-in assumption as far as revenues for the next year. So if the council approves something less than 3%, there would be a need to go back and decrease the revenue budget for the next fiscal year. We're estimating that rates, if they're approved tonight, would be effective March 1st and would show up on the April 2009 billing. In accordance with Prop 218, you need a simple majority protest is needed to block the increases. That would vary per the actual utility, depending upon the number of connections, but it's approximately 3,600 protests for each of the utilities. I believe as of 5 o'clock tonight, my office had received some 435 protests from that were qualified from property owners. We did receive another 84 or 85, I believe, from members of a mobile home park, but because they're on a master meter, they only count as one. That's unfortunate because it's the person responsible for paying the bill is the one that gets the vote, but it's no more than one per property. That concludes the presentation that I have. What we're again asking the council to do is to approve the rates as presented in your packet. There's a full table of all the rates. We basically focused tonight on the typical residential rates. They're all across the board for commercial, industrial, institutional. I've included in your packet also what the approximate revenue increases are relative to the fiscal impact. For water services, it's about $100,000. Wastewater, $125,000. Storm drain services, $12,000, and solid waste, $82,000. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council have any questions, or would you prefer that we open the meeting and hear the comments from the public? At your pleasure.
Comment from the community.
Sam?
Yep.
Sam? Okay.
Okay, first Rick Walters. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on just one second.
That's all right, Rick. While you're coming up, I just need to officially open the
Sorry about that, Rick.
public hearing. I just want to make sure before I do that.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. My name is Rick Walters, and I live in the city of Galt. With the worst economic crisis in this nation's history upon us, our city government will approve or deny a recommendation by staff to raise utility rates by 4.1%. This should have been a non-starter from the beginning. In other words, our council should have told Public Works no from the beginning. But as you can see, we are here now. I'm totally shocked at the approach our city government has taken on the matter of utility increases and management. For the past 10 years, we've had increase after increase, and our city government keeps coming after us for more. Public Works will never be satisfied with the money it has now or the increases planned for the future. Their model, as defined by the rate study, shows continued increases indefinitely. Now let's ask some questions and see where the money goes. This city has been paying fines to the Water Quality Control Board for non-compliance of our wastewater permit for a long time. We were just fined thousands of dollars, and I believe more will be on the way. Who pays for these fines of $100,000 or $200,000? We do with increased utility costs. When money is transferred out of the sewer and water fund to pay for other city employees' increases, who pays for this? We do with increased utility costs. When the city keeps up with other cities' wages and compensation costs, who pays for this? We do with increased utility costs. I have often said that our property tax money is supposed to be used for running the city, which, by the way, includes payroll. No wonder this city is in fair financial shape. It's because the ratepayer is paying for every single detail or expense. If these rate increases are not held in check, our rates in 10 years will be, not maybe, will be $310. I would like to thank our past council for the establishment of the Wastewater Oversight Committee. While serving on the Upgrade Committee, I've asked probing questions intended to get a feel as to how our government works financially. Government officials were courteous and engaging, but I sensed a feeling of not wanting to divulge the total truth in some, not all, questions that I asked. The following is a list of interesting costs associated with our utilities. Water payroll increased to $500,000. Sewer payroll increased to $500,000. The water fund budget will transfer $352,000 to the general fund for other city wages. The sewer fund budget will transfer $415,000 to the general fund for other city wages. Fund 13 Capital Water and Fund 14 Capital Sewer budget will transfer $114,000 from these accounts to the general fund for city wages. Heat, light, and power costs for sewer and water will be $1 million by 2010, and no one is trying to reduce these costs for the ratepayers. Our government solution? Raise rates. Wastewater Upgrade Fund 15 will transfer $209,000 to the general fund for other city employee wages. This transfer to pay other city employee wages for a period of 20 years will result in a net loss of $4.5 million from our upgrade fund. That's staggering. This last fact was interesting because our government stressed early on that the upgrade account would stand alone and would not be joined with the regular sewer account, and that the fees would only be used for the wastewater upgrade and nothing else. As you can see, there is no truth to this statement of 2 years ago. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walters. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Slaughterbeck?
John Slaughterbeck, and I live in the city of Galt. Congratulations, Liz.
Thank you.
What I'm worried about is not so much what our sewer rates are right now, but it's where they're going to. I see a lot of things in the future. I would like to address you, the citizens of Galt, and give you some reasons why this city shouldn't increase utility rates. And I'm really more concerned about sewer rates, wastewater treatment plant, than anything. Your sewer and sewer upgrade account revenues total $4.4 million a year. Now, this is serious money we're talking about. Total revenues from utilities, $8.4 million a year. And this is also serious money. City's wastewater permit only allows effluent discharges to Laguna Creek November through May. In 2005, the city's wastewater land application and wastewater storage options were reaching their limits and would impede additional development. This city needs land for irrigation for biosolids application. There is serious pressures from landowners around the immediate vicinity of the wastewater treatment plant that prohibits this city from being self-reliant and into the future. 2005 Council made the decision to modify the effluent storage reservoir to increase the available storage volume. The modification involved removing a significant amount of material from the bottom of the reservoir. This resulted in more storage of wastewater with that additional development. Cost for this modification was over $1 million. And this modification is one of the reasons why the Regional Water Control Board fined the city in the amount of $108,000. This is also serious money. The modification to the storage reservoir has altered the reservoir, and now there's turbidity in the effluent treated water discharges to Laguna Creek and violations in permit requirements. Now, this was not a good idea to use tax money for this modification. Laboratory reports from 2005 to date will show that the city has been violating its permit requirements since the reservoir modification. Work is underway to install a bypass pipeline bypassing the storage reservoir. Cost for this bypass pipeline, over $1 million. And again, we're talking about some serious money here. The city will continue to receive fines until the bypass pipeline is completed in November of this year. The city has budgeted $5.6 million for equipment upgrades for biosolids off-hauling to facilitate off-hauling. Now, this is in the budget, $5.6 million for Fund 15. I can only guess why this city would want to allocate any money for future development. Biosolids off-hauling is for future development. Your sewer fund and your sewer upgrade funds have a combined total of $1.5 million budgeted for biosolids off-hauling. Again, future development. This again is planning for future development and your money. Staff is asking this council to approve a rate increase. There's a fundamental flaw in this rate increase, and I have just stated them. And the main thing that I'm concerned about is our wastewater treatment plant and some of the things we're doing out there. We're planning for future development, and to do it, we're having to modify the wastewater treatment plant. Here we're going to off-haul biosolids, and usually we put them on city-owned land. Well, this is all going to disappear if we develop out at the wastewater treatment plant. And you can see that some of the money that they're talking about, what it's going to cost for biosolids off-hauling. Why are the citizens of Galt paying for this biosolids off-hauling if it's for future development? I could go on and on about some of the problems I see. 5 minutes, you cannot get very much in. But we do have a lot of problems out there, and I hate to see spending this kind of money for biosolids off-haul. It shouldn't be. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Dan Jimenez. After Mr. Jimenez, Gloria Rodriguez.
I'm Dan Jimenez, and I live in the city, and congratulations, Liz. That was pretty neat. Before I get started on the issue of this year's utility increases for our city, let me review some of the things that most of us have heard and read in the newspapers and on TV, potential increases that will impact us from the state level. Number one, increases in sales tax of 1 cent on the dollar, increase gas by 12 cents a gallon, double the vehicle registration fees, a surcharge of 2.5% increase on everyone's state income tax. And these are just, and there's more ideas floating around there for fee hikes, but those are the biggest ones. And I understand that the staff and the council, they don't impact that at all, but the impacts of those really impact everybody's pocketbook here in Galt if this thing happens. Last year, Measure R was passed, and we're paying for that increase. Now we come to this year's proposal of 4.1 in utility rate increases. This is the worst time for this council to approve more fee hikes on its citizens. I looked into the data that Mr. Holliday just presented before I came here tonight, and I wanted to get a handle on how he arrived at the 4.1% increase, just an understanding and just looking at his slide. So this is what I did. On his slide that he showed, I saw the methodology for adjusting the rates, and I thought, well, okay, I'm on the right track here. I'm going to find the method that's being used for coming up with this 4.1%. So I got to one of the slides here, slide number 5, and it says annual inflationary adjustments. Aha, I'm on the right track. It says typically based on consumer price index, accounts for overall cost changes for general items. It's less costly to do it that way, and to establish it, it's less specific and it's less accurate. Okay. So that didn't help me. So I went on the internet and I Googled up the definition for the CPI for the Western region. And I was amazed at everything that goes into making up a CPI. For example, there's food, beverages, housing, clothing, transportation, meat, dairy products, medical care. There's all kinds of commodities in there that make up what the CPI is, so they can pick and choose what they need out of there. And again, Mr. Holliday is correct when he says the CPI is less specific and less accurate. So that leads me to believe that our public works can make that percentage whatever he wants it to be, or whatever they want it to be. Raising rates on people with funny math and calling it fees is plain trickery, especially in these tough economic times with people losing their jobs, home foreclosures, families just barely hanging on, and increases that are going to hit us from every direction. That, along with the same old threat that if this increase are not improved, the city's services will suffer. This council needs to send this proposal back and instruct staff to come up with a more creative way of thinking, innovative ideas, and how to lessen the burden on us citizens. If this council approves this increase as it stands now, then we have to make it clear to them that they're not representing us justly, and changes in the next election will have to be made. Thank you for your time.
Gloria Rodriguez, then Deborah Denny.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. My name is Gloria Rodriguez and I live in the city limits. Well, I didn't do the study like this gentleman did, but I'm just here on behalf of the community that I live, and on behalf of all the petitions also that I went out and had signed and I turned in. I feel that I have to speak on behalf of all these people, the elderly, because they are on a fixed income, and for a lot of us that have part-time jobs, and that we are barely making ends meet, and for some of us people that have lost our jobs, and I feel that this increase is very unjust at this time when we are going on this crisis. We are already struggling to make ends meet, and we are asking ourselves, do we pay for our mortgage? Do we put food on our table? Do I pay medical bills? Or do I put gas so that we can go to work those of us that have jobs, or what else do we do? You know, this increase has been almost double since 2002. So all I can ask is that you think about this increase on all of us, you know, the community and all of us, that we can't make this increase payment. Thank you.
Gloria, before you leave, Noni, this increase is a total of $3.17 a month. How will that affect you and your family?
Well, right now, you know, as it is, $3 is $3. Right now, I can say for myself, I'm living by myself and trying to make either the smart bill. I don't turn on the heater. I mean, I have a prescription at the drugstore that I haven't picked up for over a week. So, you know, a lot of us can't. You know, so most of the petitions that were signed were of elderly people that were on fixed incomes, and they're like, you know, what do we do? Another $3? $3 can buy something else. I don't know. That's on me, you know. Yeah. I don't know about Noni.
I heard a lot of the people that, as we walked through our neighborhood, almost cried. A lot of people, a lot of the ladies that were going to work, I said, are you coming or going? And they almost cried. I said, I have to go to work, and I don't even feel well, but I have to help my husband because we don't have enough money. We're already losing our house, but we don't know if we're going to be able to pay the SMUD or the city of Galt or make our car payment. And yes, all of you mentioned the increase, the rate, but we only hear one number, the one that we get on the third.
The what?
The amount that we get on the third of each month. That's the only income that a lot of us on fixed income have. And we are really struggling to make ends meet.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with me. The reason I ask is when you look at those percentages, you know, that whole
it really looks very low.
Well, yeah. Well, it looks like, if you add up all the percentages, it looks like a lot. And I'm not saying that it's not a lot, but I just wanted to be sure that everybody understood that the total for all the utilities was $3.17 if you're in Tier 1. Because I think it was confusing the way it was presented, just showing percentages without showing, you know, the actual amounts. So, you know, I know you both, and I certainly sympathize with what you're going through.
Well, you know, the rate that was done, like in 2007, that was hard. I remember I coming to the city, you know, and asking if there was some kind of arrangement or deduction that I could do so that I could afford paying it. All they could do, no, there's none, and either you pay half now and you pay the other half when it's due, you know. And that's what I'm paying, you know, half when it gets there, and the other half the other time. But it's hard. It's very hard.
I know, and we don't know what's coming towards us, so I certainly understand what you're saying.
Well, I know that, you know, I still have a home. Either I lose it for some other thing or the state takes it.
And I'm also aware in my neighborhood there's a lot of households that have 3 families living just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
And just around the corner I can verify
just
for
to
that.
make the mortgage payment.
So if you can, do help us. Thank you.
Thank you, Noni.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Deborah Denny?
Good evening. I want to apologize first. I'm not a good public speaker, so forgive me. I want to make this very short and sweet. I'm one of the statistics. I've lost my job. You've been raising rates since 1990. My bill was $40 every 2 months. It is now $195.46. That's ridiculous. You've been collecting a surcharge for 1 year of $10 a month, and for 3 years of $25 a month. This total comes to $7,344,000 a year, or just in a surcharge. Mr. Halliday says this is sitting in the bank for a rainy day. I think we've reached the rainy day. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more speakers? I have no more speakers. Is there anybody else that would like to speak at this time before we hear from the council? If you would like to come forward and state your name and where you live, please.
My name is Leilani Snyder, and I live in Galt. I didn't fill out one of these. I didn't know you had to. Anyway, I've done the same thing. I come to Galt in '99 with a bill of $80 a month, or $80 a payment, and I've seen it jump. I mean, I've got receipts from 2001, you know, at 81, 86, and as of this last month, $195, and I don't understand it. I mean, I was at the meeting last year, and he was the same way about, oh, well, you'll see the upgrade. It's only going to be this much money, but every year it's something else. I could show you the increases. So you could talk about, well, it's $3. The whole thing is, it's how much it's jumped. And it's next year we're going to be in here again. So, and that's the way I feel. It's every year. $3, $10, $50. When's it going to stop? And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for coming up and expressing your
Thank you.
feelings. Is there anybody else? Please come forward. State your name and if you live within the city limits.
Yes, my name is Margaret Munson, and I live in Emerald Village in Galt. And just a comment that when I'm retired now, but I worked for many years, and in the private side of the community where you have what we call private business, when we are doing business and we have a budget that we stick to, or not. If you don't stick to it, then you're probably in trouble with your boss. I'm just wondering, have you ever heard of like doing the job with the money you have rather than increasing it all the time? I mean, as citizens, we're so tired of the public leaders that we all elect and put in office to serve us as best they can. And we see now the legislature and everything that's going on, and there's more fraud and graft and all this stuff going on than the legislative people serving their citizens. And I'd just like to see, for one time in at least our small community, doing with the money you have. I mean, it's like you never heard of it before. But when I had a job and I had a budget, well, I got in trouble if I didn't stay with my budget. And I got in trouble if I didn't spend it either like it was proposed to be spent. So, that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other speakers?
I have no speakers.
No other speakers. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Comments from council? I'll start with my left. Barbara?
One of the questions that I have, and let me just say that I think our staff is looking after the city as best they can. But I was wondering, we get these monthly reports, and every month I'm looking at the water fund and the sewer fund, and it shows the expenses and the revenue And over the past year, it looks like we're doing really well as far as collecting the revenue and our expenses are less. And it's always been confusing to me. Would you, Inez or Greg, explain why it looks like we're doing so well with our revenue versus our expenses? Maybe these charts are just too simple. But it is something I have to ask the question, because if we're asking people to pay more, I need to know.
Under the revenue side of it, what we try to do is present the total budget and divide it equally in the 12 months, and then show you where we are compared to the on an annual basis. So for the revenues, we actually look like we're right on track on the revenues. We see an increase in 1 month and a decrease in the next month because the bills go out. It covers a 2-month period, and our customers have a tendency of making that payment once every 2 months. So the majority of our customers make the payment every 2 months, not on a monthly cycle. So if you looked at the revenues, we actually are close to being on target. On the expenditure side, we're a little bit lower than the annualized budget, and there's a couple of line items in there that I did take a quick look at those, and some of those were heat, light, and power was down. It's a $500,000 line item, and we're behind on some of those monthly expenses by the time we get the invoice and code it. So it appears as if we're actually spending less, but we're just behind about a month on paying some of the bills. We do also have some professional service line items that are in here that have not been fully expended as well. So if you looked at it through January, though, in the water fund, we're just about $87,000 less than what the annual budget would be through January. So again, I think there are some one-time items in there or professional services that have not been fully expended as of yet. So it does give the appearance that our expenditures are a little bit lower than the annualized budget. But again, $87,000 through January is made up, I think, primarily through some of the professional services that have not been fully expended. But and on the sewer fund, it's about $130,000 that we're just below as well.
I was looking at the year-end projections, and I'm getting confused which one was up and one was down, and it didn't seem to make sense why they would be off unless the additional penalties or something like that are being paid. There's also the balance in the budget includes capital projects, and if we have an awarded project, I know we have a water project this year. The arsenic project was just awarded. Would probably just show up in the January's project. That was a big chunk of money came out of the 5 fund. There's a lot of money in the fund this year for the Live Oak lift station and force main. That's a tremendous amount of money coming out of the 7 fund. So the numbers you're seeing in the total budget include capital projects that we just not awarded contracts yet.
Would you describe the significance of that force main, that Live Oak force main and lift station?
That's the primary lift station. All of the sewage in Galt goes through one of several lift stations, but all of the sewage goes through that one. It's the last lift station. It's on McFadden Road, and then goes to a 2-mile force main that goes to the treatment plant. If that station breaks down, we have a period of maybe 4 or 5 hours before we have problems with sewer spills. It's an aging station. It's 20 years old. We're in the process of designing a replacement. The force main itself is 2 parallel pipes that runs along the railroad tracks. Years ago, the whole thing was hit by a car. We had significant damage to it. The pipe is old and it's deteriorating. We're putting in a whole new separate, or attempting to put in a whole new separate system, so we have some redundancy. Once we shift to the new system, we'll be able to go in and rehab the old one. We can't take it out of service right now. We can't do anything in 4 hours. It's vital that we keep that thing in a functioning shape. And that's why it was originally in the CIP was put into 2 different years because we just didn't have enough money. But last year at the budget cycle, we managed to maneuver some projects around. We basically pulled both those projects into the current year because it's much cheaper and easier to build them both at the same time, rather than build a lift station and have it sit there unused for a year waiting for the pipe to go on the ground. But it's, in terms of, it's an unseen project. No one's life is going to change. Kind of like a car repair. You're still going to flush your toilets. Things still going to go down the sink. No one's really going to know it's there. It's just that we don't have to worry about it constantly every day breaking down and facing more fines from the regional board for sewer spills.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to ask, by contract, we have to pay Cal Waste more because of the increase in fuel costs. If we don't raise the rates, that money would come out of our general fund, correct?
You would have to find another means or reduce your service. And one of the things that I don't think you can ask somebody on a contract basis, if they use 1,000 gallons worth of gasoline in a month and it goes up, then their cost goes up. And so we've tried to work with them on something that's realistic, because there are certain things in their contract that they can't control. They can't control the price where they take the garbage. They can't control their fuel price. So we have to work out some types of means in the contract for them to do that, because I don't think anybody wants to operate at a loss.
So I guess so you're not telling me that it would automatically come out of the general fund, or?
Well, you'd have to do something with it. It is a potential that you could look at trying to use general fund money, but usually you don't do that. Usually in your services, the concept is those who use the service should pay for it, whether it be water, sewer, drainage, or garbage pickup.
So if we don't approve this rate increase and it doesn't come out of the general fund, where would it come from?
I have no idea. I couldn't tell you that. I've never actually seen that happen. I've never seen anyone take a general fund and subsidize a utility.
One last question, and this is because I've had citizens ask me this. What are the chances of having a senior discount for utilities? What are the chances?
We've gone through this before, and the attorneys have indicated to us so that everything's fair. The only way you could have a senior discount is if the council wished to use general fund to augment it, because you can't use the other users' money to subsidize the senior citizens.
Okay.
Just to clarify this comes up at every public meeting. You can use the other ratepayers' money if they agree to it.
We'd have to go out to a vote.
You have to go back to a situation just like we just did. We'd have to figure out how many seniors or what the council would have to set that limit for the discount, who would apply for it or who would get it, what the costs were. We would then somehow spread that across all the rest of the customers. And if the rest of the customers agree to it, to a surcharge, then you'll be able to offer that discount to select customers. Or the council could then pick some other type of fund to backfill that void. What the council cannot do is approve a discount for seniors and force it upon the rest of the ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, Darrell?
No, I don't really have questions. I talked to the staff on the presentation, the comments, so I pretty much agree with most of what was said, and the lady I think who spoke last in particular, and I think it was you also that referenced, and I know one of the earlier speakers, what the state legislation is doing right now. And so I'm glad that you're upset. I'm upset. I'm going to pay these same rates, whatever they end up being. My mother-in-law is basically in the situation the two ladies spoke about. I fully understand what it is. And as I've said before, and I'll remind people tonight, next time a ballot measure comes before you that says something like the Clean Water Act, read what's in the Clean Water Act. It sounds good, but because those laws have been passed both at the state and federal level, and I think the last lady was asking, why does it cost more this year than last year? Just the arsenic, just that one component of the entire rate study. A year ago, we didn't have to take the amount of arsenic out of the water that we do this year. Nothing else changed. Government passed a new guideline. In some cases, we now have to have sewer water cleaner than drinking water, and that's a sad condition. But it's because 51% or more of us voted for a law that sounded good, and now we're paying the costs of those laws. So please, with the frustration you have before any more laws get passed, call your county supervisor, your state assembly member, your state senator, and then your federal assembly and congressional members, and tell them, quit passing laws that make my city raise my rates. Just the arsenic alone is a huge amount. We've been drinking the exact same water for however old you are, you've been drinking it. The water hasn't changed, the law changed. And so that cost, everybody in our city has to pay the cost to comply with that law. If the Senate doubles our car registration tonight, the cost tomorrow will go up. Nothing changed. They just doubled it. That's all. And if they call us up or send us a notice that next year another thing changes. All of us in this city or any other city are going to pay whatever the cost of complying with that new rule is. The cost we have, as some people mentioned salaries and things, I wish that was our highest cost. That's our lowest portion. It's all these other things, the upgrade. We went out, not we, this council, a council quite some time ago, but people like us, and did what the state of California required us to do. And we built an entire new waste treatment plant. Those of you who lived here know where the old one was. We had to borrow money for decades. It isn't even paid for yet. And they've made us say that one's not good enough anymore. Now you got to do this new thing. So I don't like this any more than you. I don't know anyone who does. There's no upside to raising this other than to be able to keep doing the same service we did last year and the same service we'll need to do next year, which is to let water come out of your faucet and then so you can let it go down your drain or flush it down your toilet. And I think it's horrible. I think it's horrible, but both state and federal guidelines keep changing, and I think Ted's probably said it more than anything. I think it should be against the law that either the state or federal government can force you to bond and borrow money to build infrastructure and then force you to change it before you've even finished paying for the infrastructure from the last guidelines they had. And I'd like to see a law like that passed, but until it is, we're stuck. And these are basically taking what does it cost to make water come out of the faucet and divide it by how many of us are in the city. If 5,000 people left the city, the rate would go up proportionally, because those of us left would have to pay for the 5,000 that went away. The cost would be basically the same, be a little less, but basically the same. So please, on the next ballot measure, or someone tells you about clean air, clean water, or something else, know what you're approving when you pass that law, because that's where the majority of these costs are coming from.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I think we've heard some pretty good, compelling testimony tonight. Many of the issues are very legitimate and well heard here. You should be concerned about $3 a month, in my opinion. If you're somebody who's living on Social Security, getting $500 to $600 a month, it does make a difference. When you look at the state, who's raising, who's talking about raising sales tax by 1%, that's also going to affect you. If you look at the fuel that they're talking about raising 12 cents a gallon, that indeed is going to affect you, not just at the pump, but it's also going to affect you when you buy food and clothes and everything else, because there's going to be a domino effect there, and all costs are going to go up. Having said that, California Waste, I understand where they're coming from, because gas is going back up, and that additional 12 cents a gallon is going to affect their cost of doing business. So most certainly, I'm very empathetic to your situation, and I understand it wholeheartedly. We're seeing foreclosures, never seen before. I mean, we've got bankruptcies out there increasing. I believe the last rate I saw was 30%. We've got people losing their jobs. Other people are taking pay cuts. People are having to make big concessions during these hard times. And I know we just finished doing our budget, and yes, you know, our city, we look pretty good, and we're going to be able to carry out these next 2 years. But I also believe that we have very professional staff. I think we've got the best you could ask. It would be my recommendation tonight that they go back, they provide us a few options, at least 2 to 3 options of alternatives, because I'm not going to be able to support this tonight. I don't feel comfortable with it. I do believe it's hurting everybody, and I think we need to do everything we can to keep those prices intact and help the citizens as much as we possibly can. And as we move forward, we need to be looking for alternatives to address these issues. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Before I get into the argument about the rate increases, I wanted to give the public a little background about Mr. Halliday. Most of you in the room only hear about him when you get these notices in your mail letting you know that your rates might be increased. I think it's important when we talk about Greg and the work that he does to point out the fact that this is a man that comes to work 5 days a week, puts in 12 hours on most days, even though he's not required to do so, all to carry out the business of the city for the salary that we pay him. You know, we hear a lot of arguing towards Greg in regards to these rate increases, He's just doing the job that your tax dollars pay him to do. And I think he does it damn well. And I think he needs to be commended for that. Now, where I'm going to differ from Greg tonight and why I'm leaning against supporting this rate increase is because I have an extreme problem with the CPI being used as a way to calculate our rate increases. And I think the last year has proven that this is a flawed system. The cost of doing business in Galt or throughout California has not increased by 4.1% in the last year. Fuel prices have gone down, employee salaries are going down, people are laid off, commodity prices are going down, everything's decreasing. But yet again this year we see a 4.1% tally come from the CPI. To me it doesn't make sense. I don't understand where these numbers come from, and I don't understand why we're tied to using them for our City of Galt utility rate increases. We've already talked about the economy, the fact that many homeowners, families, are looking at ways to cut $1.50 out of their budget. We heard testimony from a lady tonight that has left her prescription drugs at the pharmacy for over a week because she doesn't have the money to pick them up. Because of the economy that we're in right now, these are the decisions that homeowners and families are being forced to make. And I really think that doing this rate increase right now without going back and looking at our rate implementation plan in conjunction with the water meter implementation plan as a total, I think would be a disservice to the community. So I feel that if there truly is a need to recapture these costs, we need to do it in conjunction with the water meter implementation plan, not right now independently. So I'm not going to be able to support the rate increases tonight.
Well, this is going to take everyone by surprise, because you're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you. I concur with these two council members here. Okay? Now, let me, please allow me to finish. I believe that we need to reevaluate this proposal and this increase. But I would like to ask staff to come back with some options. I understand what the law is, and I have to convey, and we have to review everything. It doesn't mean that it's going to go away. You're probably still going to get an increase, but I cannot support this action tonight. Okay. So I know that you'll keep us in the loop and review, and I want to thank you for everything that you have done and all the staff. But anyway, I don't need to say any more. So we need to know if there's a motion, or
Hold on a second.
we're just going to...
The solid waste one in particular, the city is contractually bound to Cal Waste to have an increase that goes into effect on March 1. If that does not occur, then we need to come up with some alternative funding for that. The alternatives to move forward with that rate increase, which is time sensitive. The other ones are not as time sensitive. It gives staff the ability to analyze the other rate increases. There's nothing that we can analyze on Cal Waste costs unless we go back and find some alternative funding from the general fund or some other source. It's the contract is the contract.
Well, I'll step forward, Mr. Mayor, and make that motion because, as I've discussed before, my problem with this calculation is with the CPI. The solid waste fees are not tied to that. This is a contracted rate. So I'm comfortable with making a motion to approve the solid waste. I'll second that.
Before you move on,
we had one comment from...
It won't affect this vote, but I wanted to take just a minute or two and talk about the CPI, how we came about it, what the situation was when it was done. When I first came here 10 years ago, for a significant number of years, I want to say 10, I could be off some, the city had not raised any rates in the city, and so the council went through a dialogue to determine what would be the best way. And what the theory was at that time was, instead of waiting and not doing anything for several years and waiting until somebody had a 30 or 40% increase, they decided that what they wanted to do was try and have some type of yearly fee based upon some type of criteria so that the city would never get into the same situation that they were before. I have no problem having you ask Greg to do that. But what you may want to do is give him some type of guidelines as where to go, because the CPI and the particular one that we look at was passed by the council and directed to the staff to use as the CPI. Okay, so if you have some issues with that, now the CPI, the specific period of time of the year that we do it and when we do it was indicated, and so it's cyclical. But you may want to give him some type of direction on what you think he should look at as opposed to using a CPI indicator.
If I could also, Steve, a procedural question about the need to carry on the public hearing relative to bringing this back. We need to continue that. I don't have to go back and renotice to change the fees. So like a little direction there, if appropriate.
I think there's a couple of things. First of all, if the council is going to entertain a motion on the solid waste rate, we'd have to certify that there's not a majority protest before the council would approve that increase. So that's one procedural item. And then, as it relates to the public hearing, the council could leave the public hearing open as it relates to the other three fees until further information is brought back by staff.
Do you want me to certify the number of protests that the city clerk's office received?
Yes.
We received 435 qualified protests.
And the total, I'm sorry, the total number that was required in order to have a majority protest?
3,600?
Approximately 3,600.
3,600.
And the 435, those were qualified. We did receive approximately 80 that we considered not qualified.
Thank you.
Okay. Direction.
A motion is still on the floor. And second?
And second. Any further discussion? None? We'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Now, do we move on or do we?
Do we have any thoughts for staff as to how?
Start off as I mentioned in my presentation, the rate study prepared by staff and HDR that incorporated what council has approved included the need for rate increases of 9% for water and 14% for wastewater. So they were scaled back to the CPI as part because we thought the cost would be less because we're not going to implement all those right now. It was scaled back to the CPI as a handy indicator based upon past council action of what that cost would be rather than going and doing the whole study over again. And that was the reason why it was cut back. My decision to come back and recommend that would be the maximum increase at this time in anticipation. In terms of deferring this to the implementation of the water meter January 1st, I anticipate coming back to council sometime in October, November with that plan. So there would be the loss of whatever revenue would occur from March 1st going forward, which would not be a huge amount of money. I could probably bring this back, maybe not in 2 weeks, but in a month with some new ideas. But that's where I got to the point that I have with 4.1. But unless we make some changes in the CIP and some drastic changes relative to some other programs that council has approved, I will be coming back with recommendations to increase the water rates by 9% and the wastewater rates by 14%, unless council has agreed to combine the 7th fund and the 15th fund. I have no choice. These are the costs that were estimated based on the programs that the council has approved.
Okay.
Well, we've closed it.
Yes, it had been closed. There'd have to be a council vote to reopen the public hearing if that's the desire.
Council, we'll have to revote to open it up.
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Based on the results, I'm okay with that. I'll make a motion, or you just need a consent?
Need a
Probably
motion
have a motion to reopen it.
I'll make a motion. Second.
and seconded. Okay, no discussion, vote, call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. Go ahead, Mr. Walters.
Rick Walters again. Thank you very much for opening this back up. On the Wastewater Oversight Committee, we get a monthly report of expenditures and revenues. And maybe you can explain to me where it goes under Fund 05, investment interest income. $80,000. Fund '07, water, the regular sewer account, interest income, $105,000. Fund 13, capital water, interest income, $95,000. Fund 14, capital sewer, $110,000 interest income. Fund 15, upgrade oversight committee, $80,000 interest income. That totals to $470,000 a year. What are you doing with that money?
Every fund has to maintain some type of balance, and that money is invested, and that is interest that we get off from that investment. And so the council indicates what level they want and make sure that each fund doesn't go below that for emergency purposes, but those are reserves in those accounts.
Well, the full fact is you have $470,000 interest income that you can use to offset this year's money that
That's already included in the budget. It's a part of the budget. Well, it's a normal process. If you understand accounting process, the city's doing it exactly the way they're supposed to. It's not something that they've done wrong. It's not something that they shouldn't be doing. Matter of fact, as citizens, you ought to be happy that there's some reserves and that it's not down to zero.
Yep.
They do use it. It's in the budget, Mr. Walters.
Okay. Any other comments or direction from council?
Any other speakers?
Any other speakers? Nope.
Procedurally, how do we then continue this?
Mr. Mayor, what I'd recommend is, since the consideration of the other three rates is going to be continued, I'd recommend that you leave the public hearing open at this time and continue the matter to a date certain.
Okay.
Whenever Mr. Holliday believes that he'll be able to come back with whatever further recommendations the council is looking for.
You want to try to, I'm willing to meet with you this week.
I would have to say right now I could commit to the second meeting in March. I don't believe I can meet the first meeting in March.
Okay. Sound good?
Any motion to that? And I'll move that the public hearing be left open and to be brought back to the council in the second meeting in March.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Further discussion? None? Call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay. Second council meeting in March.
I have a question.
Well, we,
Does that mean can we go get additional signatures?
The protest period has ended, because that was a protest by today's hearing. The purpose of keeping the public hearing open is that if Mr. Halliday comes back with additional information, additional proposals, then there's an opportunity for the public to provide comment on those proposals. But the majority protests were due by today's date. That was the date that was specified in the notice that went out to the public.
okay.
If I may, you're welcome to bring just a petition of your friends if that's what you choose to do. You can,
Okay.
sure,
Well,
you can do that anytime.
Because we just fall short because of the way the notice is all asking homeowners, and then we found out later that was good, that you, people who rent, they were rich, they were themselves. So we feel we get a lot of those people. So we feel we might be able to come up with a, needed amount of people and
You can always submit that type of thing to the council. You don't need anything other than your interest to bring it forward.
okay. We'll move to the, go ahead.
Just as a point of clarification, the only protest that would count would in fact be a protest by a property owner under Prop 218, which is a law that applies in this case. So that would be the protest that would count. It's not a tenant opportunity for tenants to they can provide a protest, but that's not counted towards the majority requirement under the law.
If I could clarify, Steve, based on our conversation, that was my original understanding. I did say that at the public meeting. Then you and I spoke after the fact. It was my understanding that Prop 218 had either a codicil or some further interpretation that allowed a tenant had a property right as long as they were the one primarily responsible for paying the bill. So we could receive one protest per property, whether it came from the owner of the property or it came from the tenant, depending upon who was actually responsible for paying the bill. And to that effect, we did send letters out to everybody that received improper information at the public meeting. We sent letters to everybody to inform them of that oversight. And so we'll accept, as I understand it, protests from an owner or the tenant, whoever is responsible for the bill, but it's one per property. This does not apply to, unfortunately, to mobile home, to apartments, to condos where you've got 50 people on a master meter. There is one vote for that one property, whether it comes from the owner or from one of the tenants or a petition of 80 signatures. It still counts as one protest vote. But I'm an engineer. I would defer it to Steve, and maybe I misunderstood that clarification.
Well, I'll re-examine it and clarify at the next meeting, but regardless of that determination, it would not reopen the period in which to receive protest.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item, which is ordinances. City Clerk.
Okay, alarm permit fee.
Chief.
I'm good. Well, this, Mayor and council members, this is a request that the council consider repealing Chapter 5.08 of the Galt Municipal Code, canceling the fee currently collected for alarm permits. Ordinance number 9902 was passed in 1999, established an alarm permit fee and penalties for excessive false alarms. The issue fee was set at $5 for every 2-year period, with the false alarm fee being set at $50 per event for every false activation in excess of the 3 false alarms in a calendar year. The original purpose of the ordinance was aimed at reducing the number of false alarms, causing an expedited response, as this was creating a drain on police staffing resource levels. Unfortunately, the management of this program now exceeds our clerical staffing resources and the current operating expenses necessary for continued operation of the program. In 2008, there was approximately 850 registered permit holders and 20 locations that received in excess of 3 false alarms in that calendar year. Given the relatively low number of excessive alarms violations coupled with the department's minimal clerical staffing level, we're recommending that Chapter 5.8 of the Galt Municipal Code canceling the fee currently collected for alarm permits. The fiscal impact of this is loss to city revenue of about $2,125 a year. Questions?
Move staff's recommendation.
Second.
Any further discussion? None? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Regular calendar, Finance Department.
City of Galt report to the City Council and single audit report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2008.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. This evening, staff is recommending that council accept the report to the council and the single audit report for fiscal year ended June 30, 2008. As a way of background, on December 16th, 2008, the city's comprehensive annual financial report was presented and accepted by council. Additionally, each year the city's financial report is audited by independent accountant, and the firm is Macias, and we do have a representative here this evening. Greg Lucido is here. This evening, there are 2 additional items that council staff is asking acceptance for. The first one is a report to City Council. Within the report, there are 2 sections. One of them is the required communications, which basically is a requirement pursuant to professional accounting standards. There was one comment, which I will go into a little bit more detail under the single audit report. Additionally, the prior year recommendations, there were 4 that were presented last year, which basically present suggestions for improving and strengthening internal controls. Staff has implemented various processes in response to those recommendations. The second report is a single audit report, and that basically presents all of the activity under the federal awards programs that the city does receive and there's compliance issues. One deficiency is noted within the report, which has to do with the infrastructure valuation. The beginning fund balances for infrastructure was noted. There was independent work efforts by city staff as well and by the consultants. Staff members have reevaluated the processes internally and have addressed that, so we expect that that finding will no longer be present. Additionally, within the report there was a finding from the prior year that the report for fiscal year into June 2007 was not submitted timely, and again that was due to the late reporting of the financial statements and the infrastructure process and so forth. However, the city did have since submitted the report. The financial impact, there are no costs associated with the reports presented this evening. However, upon acceptance, we will be submitting the single audit report to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and the State Controller's Office. Basically, they're responsible for the oversight of the various grants that we receive. If the reports are not submitted by March 30th, 2009, basically some of our grant eligibility could be compromised. So again, if council has any questions of me or Mr. Lucido, we'd be more than happy to address those this evening. If not, we would ask for your acceptance of both reports this evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Barbara? Yeah.
Nope.
No? Sorry, man.
Okay, back to me, okay. I did have a couple of questions. In the letter, in the second paragraph, he states, we consider the city's internal controls over financial reporting in order to determine our auditing procedures for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the financial statements and not to provide an opinion on internal controls. Is that common with most jurisdictions that you don't do that?
That is actually a professional requirement. So what we do, excuse me, we are required in accordance with government auditing standards to design our audit with using consideration of internal controls over financial reporting. However, we do not test the controls for the purpose of providing opinion on those controls. We provide only opinion on the financial statements. There is, in the corporate world, you will have what you might have heard of a 404 compliance audit or Sarbanes-Oxley, where you will actually have procedures performed and an opinion provided on internal control or financial reporting. We are not required to do so under government understanding. So yes, it is standard in the industry.
However, if you find something that you see, it's your responsibility to at least note it in the audit.
Absolutely.
So if they don't go looking for it, but if something comes up and they see it and they think that it's an issue, then they're
Bring it up.
Yeah. There's basically three categories that we report on. One would be just a recommendation, which majority of the comments we've classified them as. There's also a significant deficiency, which would be a control weakness that would could possibly lead to a material misstatement, and then there's a material weakness that would a condition that exists that likely lead to a material misstatement. So that's the three categories that we would report if we did.
The only other question I had was concerning, I can't find, a lack of communication between Public Works and the Finance Department. I don't know if you can answer that, but I was wondering how that happened and what have we done to be sure that it doesn't happen in any department or in the future.
Actually, I'll go ahead and address that. What happened with infrastructure as if I can just refresh what happened with GASB 34, it was the first year that the city was required to implement infrastructure and actually report the value of infrastructure on our financial statements. So we hired an independent consultant to perform that work. Since then, there were two items that actually created that misstatement. One of them was whenever there is a improvement on infrastructure that's paid for by a developer. So for instance, if we have a subdivision that eventually gets accepted by Public Works, that information has to be transferred into the financial statements of the city, because once we've accepted them, they become property of the city of Galt. We did not, even though it was accepted by council, finance did not say, oh, by the way, we need to add those items. That came through independently from the Public Works Department. So now, since then, we have incorporated different processes. In fact, we had a meeting before the end of the year, and we just had one, I believe, last month, and we're coming up with steps. We have a report that basically says there's a form that says whenever there's a report or improvements that are accepted by the Public Works Department, they're going to give us a breakdown, how much of it is for water lines, sewer lines, and so forth, and then we're going to take that value and put them into the financial statement. So we're actually going to do that through December 31st. We're going to do it twice a year now. Instead of waiting at the end of the year and kind of in our mad dash. The other item was where, I'm trying to think what the other item, there was two of them. One of them was, we didn't know, based on our financial statements, we looked at a project that was on the books as of June 30th. There were no payments for the next 60 days. We thought the project was actually completed, so we closed it out from construction progress and moved it over as an infrastructure. In fact, there was other work that was done, and so it changed our financial statements. We now have a report that we're sending to Public Works, and they're letting us know, yes, this project has been completed, or no, it's still construction progress. So it's not because we weren't talking, but we just didn't have, it was the first year of implementation, and we really didn't know what all the reporting requirements were. So because of that, after the comment that we received from the auditors, we've strengthened processes, or we've developed additional processes, and I believe strengthened internal controls. There is a more coordinated effort by the departments. Again, it was the first year that we implemented, so a lot of it was new to us.
And keep in mind, this has not been an uncommon occurrence in the implementation of this. This is a major project, and this was brand new. These are brand new procedures that were put into place, and it's nothing I would really consider a significant concern outside of our professional standards kind of required us to report as material weakness as we did. It wasn't because we truly feel that it was something that's a significant or a institutional problem. It's just it was a new process. I know that a lot of the larger governments in the implementation several years ago, we're talking, we had hundreds of millions of dollars in changes and errors because of the new process going in. So this is really, it's really not too significant at the end of the day, and especially in consideration of the aggressive pursuit of putting in new procedures and policies to address the situation.
Those are the only questions I had.
Okay. No further questions. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the report.
Okay.
Second?
Second. Any further discussion? None? We'll call for the motion.
Aye.
Excuse me,
Aye.
call for the vote. We already called for the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will adjourn to the redevelopment agency. Roll call, please.
Board members Payne? Here. Claire?
Here.
Haynes? Meredith?
Here.
Shelton?
Here. Public comment.
I have no speech.
Information consent agenda. If you could read those, please, Liz.
Yes, two items. Number one, approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 3rd. And number two, approval of the redevelopment agency warrants.
I'll move the consent items.
Second.
Motion's been made and double seconded. No further discussion. We'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Come around.
Adjourn and reconvene to the Galt City Council.
Yes, I have a couple things. Before you tonight is, council expressed a desire to recreate the Public Safety Committee. And before you tonight are the bylaws of that committee, the bylaws of the formation of the committee. This committee would be advisory only with no authority to implement policy or expend funds. Just quickly going through the bylaws, before you have a purpose statement, then you have a list of the committee members that would consist of 2 council members as designated by the City Council, the chief of police or designee, which is advisory, the fire chief or designee, which would be an advisory position as well, the public works director or designee, which would be advisory, parks and rec director or designee, advisory, and 5 residents of the city, with each council member selecting one person to go along with their term. So then you have some information about the meeting, the order of business, which is in the bylaws, and then a list of the officers, which will be chosen by the committee, and also the duties of the officers. Bylaw number 6, compensation of members. No members of this committee will be compensated. And then some rules on termination of membership. At this time, I look for approval of the formation of the Public Safety Advisory Committee, approval of the bylaws, and then direction to advertise 4 letters of interest for the committee. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I have one, excuse me, I don't know if this is proper or not, but am I a member of the committee?
You're an advisory member or your designee.
Or designate.
That means
I'm
non-voting.
concerned about the
Well,
compensation.
it's not approved yet, but
Okay.
Oh.
Compensation.
You don't get
Should I appoint
compensated
somebody else for that?
you're the
Assuming the chief and I
Yeah.
retain our compensation.
I didn't understand this question.
Not specifically for being a member of the committee, but
Any comments?
Oh.
If not, I have a statement, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, the only thing I wanted to comment on, this would be a posted meeting, just like any other committee, and it would be open to the public.
Open to the public. We would also post, on our committee meetings, we also post that in case 3 council members show up, we do allow for that on the agendas.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the Brown Act applies, right? The Brown Act.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just had one point
Sure.
of clarification. There'd be 7 voting members, and I just wanted to confirm that under
Go back.
3C that you intended that a quorum would be 3 voting members as opposed to 4 of the 7.
It'd be 4.
Yeah.
Right. 4 of them.
So 3 would be a quorum. That was your intent. I just wanted to confirm that.
3C. It would be
Just
4.
3. It would
Yeah,
be 4.
it would be
That's
4,
what
because
he's
there's
talking
7 voting
about.
members.
Yeah, it should be 4.
Thank you.
Right.
And if I may ask, under 3A, is there a recommendation for the fill-in on when the meetings will be held, or were you going to let the committee decide that?
Usually the committees decide when they can meet, or once the 2 council members are chosen, they kind of set the date and time of the
Okay.
meeting.
That's fine.
So with approval, we can leave that open and fill it in once the date and time is picked.
And choosing of council members. Should we do that at a later date?
You can certainly do that now under this item, which is on
We
the
would,
agenda.
we would need to approve it first and then,
Approve the bylaws.
okay. Well then, what is the pleasure of council?
I'll move that we approve the bylaws as listed in the agenda with the exception of changing, I think that was item 3,
To 4.
3C to 4 members.
Quorum to 4
I'll second the motion.
and seconded. Any further discussion? None, we'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye? Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now I'll make my statement, just a little bit. This was one of the items that I had brought back. It's very important to me. I would like to be one of those council members, but I would also not have a problem with any 2 council members being on it. That's how important this is to me. I know, Don, you and I had talked previously, but that's just my opinion.
Appreciate it. I hope to be on there.
Well, if you 2 are willing and no one else wants to try and interfere with that, then I'll make that motion.
Second.
Double seconded. Okay.
Works for me.
All right. Thank you. Welcome aboard. I think we'll make a good team.
I think we're going to do real well.
I think we will too, and I think we're going to have good, I believe we're going to have a lot of people from the public want to volunteer to be on this. I've already had a few people ask me, when are you going to start it? When are you going to start it?
Good.
And I think we're going to have good input, and not agree all the time, but I think we'll have good input just in the meetings.
I think it's important to keep conversation going.
That's right.
Get it out there and start working with it.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you all.
council.
Then we will go out and advertise for letters of interest to that and bring those letters back to council in approximately 3 or 4 weeks.
So about the second in
Second.
March.
Second meeting in March. And just a few reminders as well. Beautification Committee will be meeting February 19th at 3:30 in the City Hall Community Room. On February 26th, the Commission on Aging meeting at 5:15 in the California Room at the Parks and Rec Department. And also a reminder, and I realize this is early, but I want to start plugging this. Our Shredded event for the community will be held on April 25th on the Galt Market grounds. for everybody to shred their personal documents. They bring in a big industrial shredder. It is free to the citizens who live within the city limits of Galt. It's paid for by the citizens on their bill. That's why it's only open to citizens of Galt. So you'll be hearing more. It'll be coming out in the newsletter, so watch for it.
So they just need to bring their utility bill?
We ask for proof of ID that they live within the city. Utility bill, if you have your driver's license with your correct address.
Okay.
So.
Good.
But we will be advertising a little bit more and getting it out to the public.
Okay.
Thank you.
Comments by staff?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I want to particularly thank Greg for keeping his cool and for hanging in there.
Appreciate it.
One of the things that always amazes me is that there's no one in this world that wants to sit there and tell people that there's going to be increases in something. You'd have to be a sadistic in order to want to do that, but it has to be done, and people have to analyze what the worth of it is. And one of the problems is the public fails to realize that utilities are the same as selling gas and milk and alcohol and soda pop and bread and everything else. But because government's available and they can express themselves, they come to government, and it's not an easy thing to do, but it has to be done. I'd like to particularly thank Jason for last Wednesday when I was unavailable. I was doing some things I wish I never would have to do, and I may have to do again. But I understand that the meeting went well. I'm very thankful that when I came, that the city had a tradition to try and put money into reserves, because if we hadn't have, we could have been in a world of hurt. Now, that doesn't mean that we may not have some challenges in the future. It doesn't mean that we may not have to do some other things, but I feel very fortunate that we're as well off as we are. But the thing that we need to do is stay as well off as we can. And I hope that the city never gets into the situation that we had 10 years ago, when we were facing triple-digit costs for things. You can't give service for nothing. You have to. Greg doesn't control electricity. He doesn't control propane. He doesn't control gasoline. And as those elements that we need come up, doesn't control pipe. He doesn't control concrete and those types of things. And what people need to understand is that we're affected the same as everybody else, and we have no choice in that. But having said that, I appreciate the staff and the work that they do, and I think they've kept you in pretty good shape.
Thank you. Any other comments by staff members? None? Okay, we'll go to council comments. Vice Mayor Payne?
I just wanted to tell you about the first Thursday dinner I attended last week. It's sponsored by the local government commission, and one of my main priorities is youth. And the program was National Trends in Youth Engagement and Local Opportunities, conducted by James Moldovan, Executive Director of California Center for Civic Participation. What I got out of that was some of the wonderful things that jurisdictions are doing involving the youth. I think it was Yuba County spoke, and when they did their general plan, they actually went to the youth and got their input. They cut out little squares of green for space, open space, and maybe red for residential. And we have our Galt City Council Youth Committee. I'm hoping that this council will involve them more. You know, they're willing to come and make reports to us, but I think we should keep them in mind when we're doing things and ask them to participate. The other thing I would mention, we had a very good lunch with Guy Rutter, the representative from the Fire District Consumer Services District, I think it's the correct title. Jason, our Assistant City Manager, the Mayor, myself, who else? Is that it?
And this guy, yeah.
And I think it was a good relation building lunch that we had, and the mayor brought up one of his concerns at the same time, and I'll let him elaborate on that regarding scheduling events.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councilman Leclerc?
Just a couple quick notes. At SACOG, we've had a couple meetings. hoping for and anticipating the federal legislation for the stimulus package, and then also debating what the state is or isn't going to do. And we've had our committee meetings. We'll meet again as a full board this Thursday, and there is hopefully going to be a number of projects that can go forth in this district with the funds from the federal agencies, in particular in infrastructure areas. And of course, that's still going to be somewhat dependent on what the state ends up doing or not doing at their level. The other thing was Mayor and I and staff met again with Congressman Lundgren's staff. The reason we met again, Peter Tatishi, those of you who knew him when he was formerly with Congressman Lundgren, has rejoined as Deputy Chief of Staff. So they gave us an opportunity to further brief him on our appropriation requests for the year. So thanks to he and Marilyn and their staff for coming back down and listening again to our needs, and we've got some good insights as to where they think things are going at the national level and where opportunities are and where they aren't. But like the rest of us, they're waiting for some of the final guidelines as to how funds will flow out and to which agencies. But they'll be watching for opportunities, and the staff did a great job again in preparing both the presentation and presenting it to them so they understand why we're making the requests we need. So we're hopeful. That's it.
Thank you. John Hayes?
Yes. Let me start out with the police report, Grid 24. You know, for some of you who don't track, some of you may track some of the crimes that are occurring within your area, which I believe you should. I think it's important to know what's going on in your community. Between December and November of, rather I should say December 27 of 2007 to 2008, we saw a reduction in crime overall, especially in some of the more serious crimes, such as theft and sex offenses and things of that nature, robberies. I think this, I know we talked about it last time, Chief, and you've done an excellent job, and I just wanted to reiterate how much we appreciate the job you've done there. And it's good to see that continuing down, and I think Measure R is going to further help us down the road, I believe, because I think with all the new releases that we're looking at, I think we're going to have our hands full in the future. So I'm very happy that we did Measure R and got it passed when we did. Rent stabilization, I brought this up simply because Councilman Meredith and I have met with the park owners a few times, and we've been kind of working through some of the issues, and I think we've kind of got some of it ironed out, but I think there's some other issues in which I would like to see us kind of go back over and kind of review and discuss in more detail. And the reason I put it on the agenda is I'm hoping that we could ask Steve, our city attorney, to sit in the next meeting and kind of help us work through some of these other more sensitive issues. So I'm going to be asking direction from council in order to get permission to do that.
Thank you.
And I have one other thing before I forget. In the next meeting, I talked about this before, and about having a city hall, a town hall meeting, and this has to do with the foreclosures and many of the other issues that we're all dealing with. And we were really waiting for the stimulus package to come out to find out what kind of money was going to be there to kind of reach out to the people who really need it. And from what I've read so far, there appears that there's going to be some money out there. And depending on which paper you read, it could be anywhere from $50 to $100 million as far as helping out actual homeowners. And they haven't decided on how they're going to proceed with it yet. But I believe they're going to know more in the very near future. So what my intention is in the next meeting is I'm going to come back with a date where we can have a town hall meeting. We're going to bring in some professionals, realtors, certified realtors, etc., to address those questions that so many people in the community have. And I don't want people to think we forgot about that. I've just simply been waiting for a stimulus package, something to come out that was going to show that it was really going to reach a little deeper than the last one, something that we could work with. And that's it. As far as my request for the rent stabilization, do I need to get a vote on that right now before we proceed to the next council member?
If it's your desire to have me participate in a future meeting, then there would need to be a council vote either now or at a subsequent meeting.
Yeah, and it would be Councilman Meredith and I will be sitting in.
For my clarification, what do you hope to do from here? What's your next hopeful step?
Well, we'll sit down, we're gonna deal, kind of deal with some of the more sensitive issues. I think there's some concerns on both sides as to, you know, one side is concerned about what a rent control might do. The other one's concerned, you know, as far as the impact if they don't have rent stabilization, what it will do on the value of their mobile homes, what it will do on the increase of their rents. And what I'd like to do is have Steve sit in because he's more familiar in this area as to what we are capable of doing as a city, as probably looking at some other alternatives, if we can find some middle ground. And I feel with his expertise, maybe we can find that.
So instead of a rent stabilization, you're just looking for a dialogue for some.
Well, I mean, we got to keep our options. Yeah, we're going to open up dialogue a little bit more than what we've talked about before, and look what our options truly are, and see how serious, you know, we are about finding some solutions, and then hopefully pursuing some alternatives.
If I could just add on, I think from my conversations, Councilmember Haynes, I believe that some of the other roles that I might play, depending upon the response from the park owners, is to the extent that they were willing to enter into some kind of voluntary agreement with the city to help structure the deal points, and then if there were deal points reached between the parties, then to move from the deal point phase to an actual agreement. Of course, if we got to that point, then I think both the deal points as well as then the agreement would certainly come back to the council. The deal points would come back for a preliminary buy-in, and then assuming there was council support at the deal point level, then the ultimate agreement would come back to the council for consideration as well.
And would we be proposing to end up being the writer, if you will, the author and editor of the deal points? The reason I ask that is, do we have some idea of what it might cost to complete this process?
You know, at this point, having not met with the folks, I really couldn't give you an estimate. I think that probably the one approach for the council would be just to kind of give authorization for the initial meetings and involvement, and then to the extent that there looked like there was going to be positive dialogue, then we could take that up at a subsequent council meeting. So one option might be to provide that preliminary authorization with a you know, not to exceed amount of, let's say, $1,500.
Okay, I'd be fine with that.
Yes, Jay.
I would be interested in having Steve explain to those people when rent control can kick in and when it can't. It's my understanding that if they're not above market, that there would be no rent control unless you can show that the average cost is above the area market.
Well, we're going to go over those issues as we see through.
They need to understand what they are, because there's no sense for us to implement rent control if they don't meet the criteria.
Yeah, but we won't know that until we've really looked at the big picture. We
My
don't.
understanding, and they don't correct me, but apparently somebody's done some studies of the area to determine whether or not they are within, yeah, and you may want to look at those.
Will the park owners be at that meeting?
Oh yeah, that's the whole idea, is to sit with the park owners and go over the issues, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now.
Okay, I'd like to.
The only thing I have tonight is I was originally intending to put the National League of Cities prescription drug discount program on tonight because we were anticipating getting the proofs back for our cards and all of the free paraphernalia that they were going to give us. And we didn't get that by the Wednesday deadline, but I did get it on Friday. And I can't access the city's network here to get online, or I'd show it to you guys, but looks really good. I'll look it over with Ted and Jason by the end of this week. I'll bring a copy of it to our goal setting session next Tuesday, so you guys can all look at it too. And then I'll send back clarification to the NLC that we're comfortable with it, and then we'll get our all of our stuff back. So that's all I've got.
Thank you.
Mayor.
John, back to your
Yeah.
item. We need to, we were starting to do a motion, I believe.
Yeah,
That
we
was
need to
the
make a motion, take a vote.
Direction.
So I was gonna make a motion that, we move forward, allowing our attorney Steve Rudd to, attend the meetings with us and the park owners.
Is there a not to exceed dollar
Not to
amount?
exceed $1,500 is fine with me.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? No? Call for the vote?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, I just had a couple of things. Yes, Barbara and I met with CSD board member Guy Rudder. It was a very eventful and Jason luncheon, and I really appreciate it. I know that we all agreed, and I think it was Guy that actually brought up the main focus was to continue the lines of communication, continue it open. And so that's what we're going to do. We kind of verbally agreed that we would meet at least quarterly, and maybe the next meeting we can have the chief, we can have Ted, some other individuals there, and just continue the dialogue. So I think it's very successful. One of the things that I did discuss was the special events that happen in our community, and wanted to ensure that the CSD, the fire department, and the representatives are getting those. And we also discussed about the Public Safety Advisory Committee. I was pretty comfortable that we'd get that started, and he's going to take it back to his staff, and maybe we'll get someone there, to work on that. The main focus was when we started with the Safety Committee. One of the priorities was there's numerous events going on in the community. I just want to make sure that, fire and law enforcement are aware of that. Don, my hat's off to you for wanting to do some town hall meetings, as I've discussed. That's what I want to do. The first one will be sometime in March, and that I will hold personally, and more of a mayor's invitation. And I'm hoping from those, the people that come forward, it's more of, I want to meet the individual community, and the community come to meet me as the mayor. But they would come to us and say, well, I would like to do what you and Andrew are trying to do.
Right.
Or maybe some more information about the safety committee or SACOG or the youth. And so we can start doing this. I personally am dedicated to conducting those on a quarterly basis, so thank you. There were no other comments?
One other comment, real quick. Darrell, you and I were on a 2x2 with CSD. I'd asked about it before, but I'd never gotten any response. Are we still on with the CSD as a 2x2? Because I'd really like to resume those meetings that we had going prior to the issues that had surfaced. So I
don't know. Liz, you probably have to research. I don't remember if that ever got undone or if we're still...
Could you please do that, and then let's find out, because I'd like to get that communication going back with CSD, because we've gotten started and then we got sidetracked there for a while, but I think it's important we get that communication ongoing.
Right.
And that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor, I apologize, but that brings up another issue that Greg asked me. The council needs to determine whether or not the oversight committee will continue and whether or not appointments would be put in, because there are individuals who their time has actually expired.
Which oversight?
The sewer waste.
Wastewater treatment plant.
Well, just to clarify, I don't think anyone's term has expired because those were lifetime terms that we put on the committee.
Right, we're in the process, just like we do with every committee, we're advertising for letters of interest, and then we'll be bringing the letters of interest forward to the council to make an appointment, and they can discuss the committee at that time.
So we've had...
We're just treating it like a normal
Anytime there's a
vacancy.
new member, you have to have a reappointment. There's nothing beyond, beyond the term of the individual that appoints.
Maybe someone
resigned.
Well,
Actually, Ted, these were different. These were appointed for lifetime,
Right.
not by the term of the council member that did the appointment. It was a little strange.
Lifetime of what?
The committee.
The committee.
We did that, if you remember, because of the technical background of the oversight committee and the fact that it would take...
But you've had an individual resign.
Well, we're treating it like a normal vacancy on a committee, so it will be before the city council, and they can just discuss anything they want at that time or make an appointment.
So we'll need we need to officially agendize it.
It will be agendized in about, I'm trying to think of the deadline we put on the paper.
Okay.
But I believe it's the second meeting in March that it'll be coming forward to council.
Okay.
It might be the first meeting, it's not past the second.
you have a comment, Jason?
Just we need to go back into closed session.
Right, I was just gonna say, we need to reconvene back into closed session. No, I said, like I was gonna close the meeting, but I wasn't.
Well, don't do that. We got work to do, girl.
Not yet, not yet. Not released yet.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just had a brain fade. Yeah, that's fine. I'll clarify at the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I was.
Yeah.
No, right there. In fact, right there.
Yeah,
Looks
that's
like-
usually always.
No, it looks like it's starting to.
Right, so rain.
That's what I was.
Usually it's stuff like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know where that is. All right.
Yeah.
I'll get you.
Okay.